Wes Goldberg, Friday, October 16th. Good to be with you, my friend. Cold open question of the day. So we're coming off the Olympics. He recently had a tweet about wanting to maybe come back and take another crack at the NBA. So I'm just going to ask you, who should sign Guerschon Yabusele, one of the stars of the French Olympic team? What NBA team should sign our guy Guerschon Yabusele?
Well, it's got to be a team, and this was a cold open question in that you did not prep me for this. So I'm going to think this through with you. It's got to be a team that's playing for something. I don't need him on Detroit. I don't need him on a team that can actually that necessarily even needs a new power forward. I just need Yabusele playing in high stakes situations on a big stage. So we're going to eliminate all the teams that are going to be in the lottery there. My thought maybe at first is the Denver Nuggets. Feels like they're a team that can always use a little bit more size, especially in the front court. You know, they've got Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic there, but what else? You know, is he somebody that could fit there? And also, I don't really care about the cap dynamics of this, again, because I have not done the research on this. But
me either. This is just vibes, Wes. This is just about like what is the best basketball fit for this guy. He can figure out. That's his agent's job to get paid. We're trying to get him a good basketball situation.
Maybe put him in Milwaukee, the Knicks, teams that want to play with a little bit more physicality. I think a team like that could definitely make a lot of sense. Put him in Oklahoma City, where he could kind of be a backline defender there, a backline option there behind Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. I think there's so many teams that could use a guy like Yabusele. Maybe that's the big takeaway here, Chris, is that Yabusele is the rare basketball player who could really just fit anywhere. You know?
Yeah, I agree. I thought Denver first. That I came to be transparent with the listeners, our viewers, and with you. I was realizing as before we started recording, I didn't have a cold, and I thought, okay, Yabusele had this tweet the other day. Let's just use that. And my first thought was Denver and Milwaukee. I think two teams that just need more talent, that need guys that I think will not be intimidated by the playoffs, that will take open shots, that just will be competent NBA players at the end of the day, and that's what it feels like Yabusele is. But I think like any team that is in need of just some size on the wing / inside, like Cleveland, for instance, if they're not going to be able to do this Isaac Okoro, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson thing that seems like it might be dying out, or at least hasn't happened as of yet, and we're in the middle of August. You could do worse and try to get Yabusele in and bring back Okoro and say, okay, that we tried. Like we at least got some new bodies in here to be a big perimeter power forward type for us, and they need that, I think. And a lot of teams in the league need that position really specifically, which kind of makes entering time that he feels like a guy that if you can, I don't know the mechanics of his Real Madrid contract, feels like there would be a good market for him if he were to come over.
So there is a buyout option there in the contract, so that's going to have to be something that gets figured out there. But I'm just glad that he's willing to come over, right? I mean, we had, when we were talking with Brendan Clean before about Yabusele potentially coming over, he made the argument that, like, why would you? He's getting paid millions of dollars, playing for Real Madrid, living in Madrid. He's a featured player on his basketball team, and he made a very compelling argument as to why Yabusele might not want to come back to the NBA after it didn't work out the first time. But the draw of the NBA is so enticing to these players, these competitive MFers who just want to compete in the greatest league in the world. There is nothing that you can do to persuade them, oftentimes, from wanting to do that. And so I love that Yabusele wants to come back to the NBA. I think he ought to come back to the NBA. I think there's a team out there that should definitely sign him, because all I know is I'm not ready for Yabusele to be out of my life. I know he's technically still playing basketball for Real Madrid, but let's be honest, I'm not watching those basketball games. I need to watch him at a 7:30 p.m. tip or a 10:30 p.m. tip Eastern time during my normal basketball programming. I just need Yabusele basketball in my life. I can't wait another 4 years.
Madrid will be there when he's 40 and retired.
Sure. Yeah.
Playing 20 minutes a game for Oklahoma City, or Cleveland or Denver or Milwaukee. Not cities that I have affection for, even if I've been to all of them. But not Madrid, but that NBA life will not be there. So you gotta go for it when you can. All right, on today's show, the NBA schedule is here. We're going to each pick 3 teams that we have a question about and a game on the schedule that will tell us all about that. We'll explain that and more on today's show. Hey there, welcome into the Just Basketball Show. I'm Chris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel, and check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Want to tell you, too, that support for today's episode of the Just Basketball Show comes from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball, and you get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how it works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Wes, here's the exercise we're going to do today. Each are going to pick some teams, say a game on the schedule that'll help us answer a question about them, and explain what that question is. The NBA schedule is out. The NBA Cup schedule is here. We're close. We're about 2 or so months away. It's still a long ways to go, but media day is coming. Preseason's coming. You can feel basketball getting back at the NBA level, at least, back into our lives, which is very, very fun. Wes, I'll go first here because I sprung this on you as a last-minute kind of thing. So I'll go first, set the tone. Denver Nuggets, champs 2 years ago. A team that I think has a lot at stake next year. We don't know what their window is. We don't know how long it's really going to take for them. And I'm going to say my question is, what are we going to get out of Jamal Murray this year? Is Jamal Murray going to be healthy? Is the contract even done? Does he look like the co-star Jokic needs for them to be a contender? Can he be the best all-star level version of Jamal Murray in a big way this year and help Denver be a legit title chance? And my answer for the game that'll help us answer this question, at home, January 7th on TNT, 8 p.m. against the Boston Celtics. That is the game to me. It's the defending champs. It's a team with a lot of great defensive guards, and it's a team that Denver played close last year in the regular season. I don't remember but like very competitive games.
Yep.
Let's see how it goes this year. Let's see how Jamal Murray looks in that particular matchup.
It's also the matchup that a lot of people, including myself, predicted would be the NBA Finals matchup last season, and obviously that didn't work out in part because Jamal Murray just didn't have the playoff run that Nuggets fans are accustomed to seeing him have, right? And it was a rough playoff run for Jamal Murray. It was an even rougher Olympic run for Jamal Murray, and now if you're a Denver fan, you've got to be a little worried about, hey, what exactly happened to this dude? Because he doesn't seem like the guy that helped us win the championship in 2023 anymore. I don't know that we've got to wait that long until January 7th. I understand the point of the exercise is to kind of go beyond just sort of the opening nights and stuff like that. But also opening night for the Denver Nuggets at home against the Oklahoma City Thunder on TNT.
Love it.
We're going to know right away then if Jamal Murray is out of his slump or not. I think if you have to wait until January to answer that question, then you're already kind of having a problem with Jamal Murray if you're Denver, right? Like, I think you need to know pretty soon what Jamal Murray is going to give you if you want to feel confident about Denver going into as a championship team. That Thunder squad with Isaiah Hartenstein now part of it, Alex Caruso now part of it, there's going to be so much friction, interference between Jamal Murray and the hoop. And I think the Thunder have a chance to be maybe the number one defense in the league next season. And you put that against the juggernaut that the Denver Nuggets offense has been with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray as sort of the head of that snake. I think it's a great test right away. But, Jamal Murray, if he can get going against Oklahoma City, against Alex Caruso, chasing him around those Nikola Jokic screens and stuff like that, he's got to look right. I'm not even sure it's a matter of him making shots, although that is a huge part of it, but it's not the only part of it either, right? Mm-hmm. He needs to physically look better. Can he get a little bit more lift, a little bit more elevation on that floater and the things and the bank shots and the things that he's doing? That's what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, look, I picked January for this reason. I'm going to give him just a little bit of a broader sample size. I want a couple months just to see the full tape. Because, like, he could come out either really good or really bad, and that's an anomaly in the course of a long NBA season. Once he's, gotten off the training camp and he's kind of got out of that rhythm, picks up a little knock here or there. Is he right in January? You could go to, I think there's a couple games early at the season for Denver that we could look at and draw some conclusions. I mean, they have Oklahoma City, as you said, to open the season. You have the Clippers on that Saturday. You have on November 1st the Wolves rematch in Minnesota. That will be a huge game, obviously. And then you get in a little bit further. It's like you have Dallas on November 10th. Then you have 2 games against the Grizzlies on the 17th and 19th. The team I'm really curious to see what we get out of them this year. But a team with really good guard play that they're going to need Murray to keep up. You would think they're going to need Murray to score big in that game. But I think you give him a couple months. Let's get a big set of data and make a declaration on where we're at with Murray by that point in time. For context, for last year, Denver 2-0 against Boston. I did what I should have done before and just looked it up. In the first game, they won by 2, played 37 minutes, 15 of 21 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, only took 3 free throws, had 8 boards, 5 assists, just 1 turnover. And the other game, a 6-point win for the Nuggets, 37 minutes, 7 of 18 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line, 8 assists, 6 boards, and 5 turnovers. So 2 up and down, 2 very different performances from Murray against Boston last year. And the first one that was earlier in the season was the better performance for him.
Can I do mine?
Yeah, let's go. Let's bounce around.
Mine is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Love it.
And, well, that's the schedule I'm looking at. The game that I'm circling here in terms of the one where I think we're going to learn a lot about the Grizzlies is October. It's kind of a little stretch. It's October 31st at home against the Milwaukee Bucks, and then their next game, November 2nd, in Philadelphia. I think the Memphis Grizzlies have a chance to have the best record in the Western Conference next year. I think they are the most overlooked team in the NBA right now. When Jamal Morant is back, healthy, and in the right mindset, this team is a regular season wins machine. They've got Desmond Bane coming back healthy. Jaren Jackson is coming back. They've got basically the same roster that has won a ton of regular season games, absent of basically Steven Adams. And so I don't know why it feels like people are sleeping on them as a legit team in the Western Conference here, but they get a pretty easy start to the schedule. Utah, Houston, Orlando, Chicago, Brooklyn. So they could be 3-2, maybe 2-3 after that. Again, it kind of depends on how much time John Morant needs to work into things. But then basically after that first week, it's Milwaukee and it's Philadelphia, 2 teams that could conceivably be in the NBA Finals. And both of them big teams, both of them a lot of rim protection. And we know what John Morant wants to do when he's right. He wants to get to the basket. If he's going to have to get through Giannis and Brook Lopez, and then the following game get through Joel Embiid and that whole group there, Paul George obviously now with Philadelphia, I just think it's a great test, and I think by then we're going to know, all right, are these Grizzlies really back? Are they back to being the regular season wins machine that they were prior? Does this team have a chance to maybe win the Western Conference? We're going to know, I think, because the other part of this too, Chris, is I also don't want to be the person that just sort of pencils in, John Morant's back. He's an all-NBA caliber player. He was one before he left. He will be now. And it doesn't always work that way. The guy's coming off a season-ending injury. He's coming off of a lot of off-the-court drama and stuff that could really impact a young player, right? Like, that gets to people. We have seen off-the-court things derail NBA careers in the past several times, right? It's almost rare that a player comes back from some of the off-the-court stuff that John Morant has dealt with and just comes back like nothing ever happened. It would be an exception to the rule if he just came back right where he left off. And then you couple that obviously with the injury, and it could be a little rough at first. But that's why I'm giving him a little bit of a buffer here. But he's also young. He's also John Morant, right? I mean, he walked so Anthony Edwards could run, it felt like, as sort of the next face of the NBA. But he ain't going nowhere, is my point. And if he can have a little bit of a coming out party against Milwaukee and against Philadelphia after the first week of the season, I think that could mean a lot for Memphis going forward.
Yeah, look, I'm all with this, and I think it would be unexpected if there aren't any lumps for him. You know, just time away, like all of that stuff just means there's going to be some lumps. I also think this is a team, West, to your point, that I think they could win the most games in the West this year. I think that's entirely plausible. I also think this is a year with a lot of pressure for Memphis. This is a year where it feels like they need to take a step forward. It feels like this is a year that they have to validate some of this a little bit, and there's not a ton of changes really from their previous teams. Like, it's Steven Adams is in, and Dillon Brooks is gone from that team 2 years ago, but it's an expanded Desmond Bane, Ja, and Jaren Jackson. It's really the same core with Taylor Jenkins as head coach. Some spots to figure out. I feel like there's still maybe a trade out there for them to make at some point. But I think this is a team with pressure as well. And if they come out looking really good October 31st, November 2nd, and Ja like dunks on Embiid or has a moment where he cooks Maxey or something like that at the end of that run, it could feel like the energy is back, to your point. And if they struggle, they look off, it's like, okay, is this going to, when is this going to round into form, and B, will it? And I think that's going to be hanging over them this year. Do you agree with me though that there is pressure on them this year to deliver in some way? I don't know what deliver is. That second round, is that Western Conference Final? I don't know what that is, but to me it feels like there's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure because, and it feels weird because it's such a young team, and because it feels like, oh wow, we got our star back, and everything should just be roses right now. But there's a lot of pressure on the Memphis Grizzlies because if it doesn't work out, right? If Jamal Murray does not bounce back and is the player that he was before all of this stuff, if they don't come back as a regular season wins machine, if they don't look like a contender in the Western Conference, that by the way has gotten better since the last time the Grizzlies were in the playoffs, right? Top to bottom, then there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that this front office has to make, right? It's like, oh wow, like we were the next team on the rise, and all of a sudden we just got like lapped by Oklahoma City and Minnesota and these other teams. And by the way, Denver's not going anywhere, and these other teams aren't going anywhere. So Phoenix got better in the interim and all these things. So yeah, I think there's a ton of pressure, quiet pressure, but it exists. I think there's a lot of pressure on the Grizzlies this year to be good, because if they're something short of what they want to be, then they have to decide, all right, well, who's part of this thing going forward? What moves can we make? How do we build around Ja? Do we want to keep building around Ja? All these things. I mean, there's a myriad different scenarios, but it does sort of feel like this has to be a year where they prove that the concept still works. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to find NBA MVP odds for next year right now.
Can I give you another team?
Yeah, let me just tell you Ja Morant's MVP odds. Plus 5,000. They opened at plus 4,000 for next year. I'm not saying that that's where my head goes. I'm just saying it wouldn't shock me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think Luka's is the favorite for MVP right now with Jokic. Shea would be, I think, like the trendy pick, or him or Luka as a guy who hasn't won one yet to go get one next year. Ant maybe has like an elevated season. I just like, if I was gonna throw like an eighth of a unit on something random for NBA MVP, I think it would be Ja, just for the fun of it, because I think it's entirely possible that he gets one, and it's just nuclear 1 year.
If he's the best player on the team, if they end up coming back and winning 60 plus games, he's gonna be in the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see no problem with that.
All right, give me your next team.
San Antonio.
Okay, they were on my list as well. I will audible them out because I want to make sure we cover enough teams here. But Wes, tell me your game for San Antonio and your question.
Well, what was the game you circled? Did you have one?
I had it down to two. I was trying to not pick Boston again, but that was one of them, just because Wemby versus them is just kind of always one. And I wanted this. I was going to pick one of the Minnesota games just to see how Wemby does against the team that was just damn right incredible last year.
I'm going opening night. San Antonio in Dallas, October 24th. It's on TNT, so a nationally televised game there, big showcase. The Spurs went 0-4 against the Mavericks last season. Victor Wembanyama played well in a lot of those matchups, but the San Antonio Spurs could not win. I think there's a rush to anoint the Spurs as a team that could fight for a play-in spot. I don't know that they're there yet. I don't know that they're not there yet, right? I love the addition of Chris Paul in San Antonio. I think that's awesome. But I don't know that Chris Paul at this stage in his career, and him being really the only major addition that the Spurs made, is enough to go from one of the worst teams in the league to in the play-in mix, fighting for a play-in spot in the Western Conference, where it feels like all but one or two teams are realistically fighting for a play-in spot, or have at least aspirations of doing so, right? And so I think we're going to know pretty soon how much Chris Paul changes the Spurs. Is it enough just to have a guy to get Victor Wembanyama the ball? Maybe it is, right? I mean, how many times last year did we watch Wembanyama have to bring the ball up himself, or have to settle for some sort of contested, whatever contested means for Victor Wembanyama? There's nothing really contested about his shot. But, a low-quality long two-pointer or a pull-up three-pointer or whatever, if Chris Paul can feed Victor Wembanyama on the offensive end, and if he's doing the things that we think he's going to be doing on the defensive end, then there is a world where Wembanyama is just that good and elevates the Spurs to such a level that they become a real fighter in the Western Conference, but it's also entirely realistic that this is still a team maybe a year or two away, and you get to go against the reigning Western Conference champions and a team that you couldn't get over the hump against in Wembanyama's rookie season. I think it's a great barometer. I think it's a great measuring stick to open up the season for San Antonio.
Well, think about how we talked about Chris Paul. At least how I remember it, and tell me if I'm misinterpreting this. I remember us talking about Chris Paul like it was the best set of not training wheels is the wrong word for Wembanyama because he doesn't totally need but it's like they built some roads for Victor Wembanyama. Like they put down some sidewalks. Like there are bike lanes on this road now. Before it was just a wide open highway and it was a dirt road and there was nothing around. There's no speed limit. Now there's a speed limit. There's some control. There's stoplights. Like there's a city being built here. Chris Paul is like a part of that, but I don't think Chris Paul is like a 6-7 win added player at this point of his career. He's going to make you better. He's going to make you functional. He's also probably going to miss like 25 games. He probably isn't going to play many back-to-backs this year, I would imagine. It just feels like that betting on him to me, it feels like betting on him or thinking he's going to be like one of the top 3 reasons they elevate to the play-in feels asking a lot of him for where he's at in his career right now. It would have to be Wembanyama, but to your point about playing Dallas, if they just look more controlled against Dallas, I think that'll even just tell us a lot. If they just look like a functional NBA team when a lot of times last year they did not, that in itself is a big, big deal for what they could be this year.
Yeah, if that game's close in the fourth quarter, that's an improvement, right? And so I think the Mavericks should be and will be favored in that game. But to your point, I don't think anybody is saying Chris Paul is that kind of player in a vacuum, right? He's not the guy that he once was. No. He's not a guy that's adding, to your point, 7 or 8 wins in a season. I think his value to San Antonio is what the exponential additive value add to a Victor Wembanyama is. When you go from what Wembanyama was dealing with last year, basically no point guard who could throw him the ball in the post, no point guard who can functionally run the offense consistently, to a guy like Chris Paul whose entire job is to do that now, even though he's not the scorer he once was. He still is, I think, a trusted sort of handler of the offense, which is just something San Antonio flatly did not have last season. And so I think the difference between what San Antonio had last year and the addition of Chris Paul, that gap is so wide that I just wonder what that sort of exponential add to Victor Wembanyama's value is. Because I think everybody expects that Wembanyama could be the guy that adds 10 to 15 wins to any team's regular season record. And does Chris Paul help him do that? But to your point too, like we'll know right away, and that's why I have the first game of the Spurs season circled. Do you want to go to another team?
Yeah, let's go to. I have Philly next, and this is a little bit of I'm stealing 2 teams into this, and I am picking the Celtics again. But here's the reason why. It's Sixers at Celtics on Christmas Day. We should do after we do this, let's do a ranking of the Christmas Day games as well. We should a little ranking. We'll pull that out for the TikTok. I said the TikTok like I'm 90 years old. But Philly by that point have had a couple months for Embiid and Maxey and Paul George to gel, for all of this to kind of build up to get into a rhythm. It's a national TV game against the defending champs. Boston could have Porzingis back by then. This could be like, you would think, like there's a chance that is full-strength Boston against full-strength Philly, with the Philly having a couple months to get things flowing. That might be our reckoning on the 76ers and where we put them in the title race on December 25th, right before the new year. Pre-trade deadline, obviously, as well. They could make other moves. But when I think about, okay, I want to gauge where Philly's at different points this year. I plan on just kind of like checking myself on them throughout the year. I do this with a lot of teams where like I'll pick certain points, sort of arbitrary, but try to do it like chunks of the season. Check in, look at their numbers, look at some film, and kind of check in on where they're at. This is going to be my one. After like I do like a first month check in, this is going to be check in number 2 for me in Philly, and it's against Boston in Boston. It's a team they're gonna need to beat if they want to get where they want to go. And
that's exactly right.
Let's just find out, and I think this is a good chance for us to actually gauge if Philly can compete with Boston this year.
It's their first matchup against the Celtics of the season. It's on Christmas Day. It's part of the showcase there. It's a great point that you made about, hey, Porzingis should be back by then and maybe even have a chance to kind of work his way into game shape. And it's also a great point that you made about, hey, the fact that I don't think players don't tend to enter Joel Embiid's team and just click right away. That
No.
doesn't tend to be the case with Philly and with Embiid. So
has
it's going
Paul
to take a little bit
George
for Paul George.
Played with anyone like Joel? I mean, there's not really anyone like Embiid, but there's not really I can't think of someone Paul George has played with.
The
that
closest
is really
thing would be
like
Russell
this.
Westbrook.
It's like that or Hibbert, right? It's or like David. It's like you're either going like early Pacers or you're going Russ. Like it's that
Right.
kind of thing.
And he was the leader on that Pacers team, and Hibbert was just a guy who stood up straight, I guess, with the verticality thing and made a whole job that way.
It was got a Parks and Rec gig out of it. It was great.
Yep. No, the closest thing would be Russell Westbrook in terms of just a guy who needs the ball in his hands, and is going to dictate every single way that the team plays. And Paul George played great alongside Russell Westbrook. He finished third in MVP voting that one season. So this is a guy who has done this before. Joel Embiid is a little bit different, but neither one of them are necessarily creating space for their teammates, and they're both operating in kind of the same spots, right? So I think Paul George is actually going to fit in really well. Look, that's not a hot take, right? That Paul George fits well with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think it'll be a little bit more seamless than we're giving it credit for, but I also don't think it'll be just turnkey right away. Everybody's kind of figuring this out. It's going to take a little while. Before this Boston game, it's a relatively soft stretch for Philadelphia also. San Antonio, Cleveland, Charlotte, Chicago, a couple of games against Orlando, Charlotte, Detroit. It's like 2 weeks worth of a little bit of soft games there. The Cleveland game is a legit game. The Orlando
In Orlando,
legit,
but it's like you're getting Charlotte. Like anytime you get Charlotte, you're
But
just
it's not-
sign me up. Let's go.
But it's not Boston, right?
Right.
None of these teams are teams that people are picking to win the championship. So there's going to be a little bit of a tune-up before the Celtics matchup. And then I think that check-in thing that you're talking about, this is going to be the measuring stick game for the 76ers. This game is going to matter so much more for Philadelphia than it is for Boston, right? Because we know what Boston can do. We know that they can win the championship. There's going to be no questions about the Celtics. I don't even think that the Celtics are going to have the best record in the Eastern Conference this year because I don't think they're going to care about it, right? I think there's already proof of concept there. It was like, look, let's just win 50-plus games, make sure we have one of the top 3 seeds in the East, and then go ahead into the playoffs and do our thing. Philadelphia is going to be very motivated, I think, this regular season to get that number 1 seed, to prove that they're here, to maximize the Joel Embiid championship window and all these things, and to have those two things clashing here. And Boston will be motivated for this game. They're going to want to face Philadelphia. But if they lose, it won't be like, oh my God, do we think that Boston can win the championship? No, we're going to still think that they can win the championship. But if Philadelphia wins, then I think that puts them in a different light for a lot of people, even though I already have the Sixers in my top tier in the Eastern Conference. But I think there's a lot of people, for good reason, very skeptical of the 76ers. And this game will be, if they win it, could be an opportunity for the Sixers to prove those people wrong.
Let's rank their Christmas Day games.
Let's do it.
All right, so here are the 5 games for Christmas Day this year. And then we can. I'll let you nominate one first. Pull this up. All right, so number 1, we've got the Spurs at the Knicks. That's the noon Eastern Standard Time game. Then at 2:30, we've got Wolves at Mavs. Then we've got at 5 the aforementioned Sixers at Celtics. At 8, we've got Lakers at Warriors. And at 10:30, the Denver Nuggets at the Phoenix Suns. Where do you want to?
So I actually think
let's go 5-1.
5-1. So I actually think the more interesting part of this is what game I'm least excited about. Because I think the one that's I think the one that we're most looking forward to is obvious. It is Philadelphia, Boston. That's it.
Yeah, that's one. We've got
number
that at
2
1.
to me is Minnesota, Dallas.
Okay.
You've got Anthony Edwards and you've got Luka Doncic. I'm not overthinking this, right? Like, I am in the business of watching interesting players. Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic are 2 of the best 5 players to watch on a nightly basis, and that might be selling them short, right? They might be number 1 and 2 for the record. So I've got that as my second most exciting game. After that, I've got San Antonio and New York. Victor Wembanyama on Christmas at Madison Square Garden. I do subscribe to the Knicks should be playing on Christmas every Christmas. I know that there's like this undercurrent of NBA nerds that say, well, the Knicks need to earn it and all these things. No. Madison Square Garden is the character that we're watching. We're not watching the Knicks necessarily. We're not really, and you're always going to pair them with an interesting opponent. It's at noon. It's always the noon game on Christmas. It's always the early game, which is great because you just kind of you watch all the stuff in the morning, you kind of got things ready, and then boom, there's Ben Stiller on my TV. That's kind of fun. I'm here for it. I'm here for the Madison Square Garden. I always want like just a little glimpse of New York on Christmas. That to me is important. So there's that. After that, I've got the Los Angeles Lakers against the Warriors as the team, as the game I'm fourth most excited for. LeBron versus Steph feels like it always is a show, and that's all it is. It's also at 8:00, so by this time, I'm done with the X's and O's portion of my NBA viewing experience on Christmas, and I'm totally into the hottie toddies and spiked cocktail portion of my Christmas. So I don't have the capacity at that stage for X's and O's. I'm just here for the movie. I'm here for cinema at that point.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, and to me, is despite the fact that I have covered the league for a while, and I find watching basketball on Christmas Day and getting into the X's and O's to just be impossible.
It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. It's impossible. If you're around family and friends and all these things, unless you're on assignment, which I've also been on Christmas, where I just sort of find a corner of the house and I just watch the game by myself for a couple hours, do my work, and then return to the party. Unless you're doing that, it's absolutely impossible. And by the way, I would advise not to do that. It's just one game out of the NBA schedule. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, your life will go on. What I would say. And watch basketball with your family. It's great. I mean, I remember I had to do a recap of it for the sort of time of the 2017 Christmas Day game of Cavs Warriors, which I think to me is my favorite Christmas Day game.
Yeah,
game I've ever watched, all timer. I'm sure my recap was awful, and in the moment I was stressed out about it. But I was just I got to watch it with my dad and my uncle, and it was sick.
Yep. So last then is Denver
Nuggets
and Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'm not very interested in this game. I gotta be honest. First of all, it's at 10:30 o'clock. It's at 10:30 at night.
I will be watching that one the next day. Is what I'm telling you that now, Wes.
That's one of the ones that you pull up on League Pass the next day. I feel like I know what these teams are also. So even with Phoenix having added Tyus Jones and Monty Morris and stuff, it's all right, well, whatever. So I'm excited for all of them. I'm gonna watch all of them. But you asked me to rank them. That's my rankings.
Yeah, I have a similar ranking. I have the same 1 at 1. I am, as a recurring joke on the show, just if I can answer about LeBron, I'm gonna answer about LeBron. I'm putting that game at 2 just because it's historic. I just am also betting on him doing something insane, and Steph, who I didn't know this until I read a write up on this. Only averages 15.6 a game on Christmas. I just expect better out of Steph. But if we could get a cool game out of those guys on that stage, in what is probably a weird year for both teams, that's kind of what I want on Christmas Day is those guys cooking. And if I get
both
that
coming
at
off
8
the gold medal,
yeah,
they got this new kind of bond. It's kind of weird. It is their first game. It is the first matchup between LeBron James and Steph Curry of the season too. The NBA was smart and made sure they held that until Christmas.
Yeah, so that's my 2. Then I am going Timberwolves, Mavs. Everything you said true. Then I'm going Spurs, Knicks, and then I agree with you. I have Suns, Nuggets at last. That's just the way it is. All right, Wes, what is your? Do you want me to go, or do you want me to go next, or do you have your last one ready?
No, you go ahead.
All right. I had a couple teams in consideration. I'll just say that first. Thought about picking a Heat game. I did. I didn't do that. I know what to expect out of the Heat at some point. I had a thought about picking the Kings. I couldn't quite get there. I just kind of feel like the whole Kings process is just going to be a thing this year. I don't know if there's one kind of matchup that's really going to tell me what I need to know there. I thought about the Knicks and picking them as well, just because, it's going to be, it feels like such an all-in year for them in a way. But again, I feel like that's a team that in the aggregate, we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to kind of figure out where this is going to go. But I am going to go to a team that did make the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and I'm going to pick them against the Knicks. That's the Indiana Pacers. Pacers-Knicks, October 25th, early in the season. Kind of bucking my own choices here, but this is a Pacers team that unexpectedly made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Mm-hmm. We saw what happened with the Hawks when that happened. They regressed back. Now Trae Young saying weird stuff about this rookie class on Podcast P, and I don't understand why he decided to do that. But this is a season I think is going to tell us where the Pacers are going to go, what this roster is actually capable of. Not a huge offseason for them, really. They re-signed Toppin, they re-signed Siakam, they re-signed Nemhard. Like, not really a ton of changes to this team. And they're betting that what worked last year is going to work again. Maybe Jarris Walker comes in. Maybe like Wiseman does something for them and it's like a meaning it's I don't know, but there's not like really changes to this roster. They are saying what last year was last year will work. Halliburton will be healthier, and we trust that. I don't really buy that. I don't really believe that that's how this ever works in any sport. You can just stay the same and expect to get the same result. I think them seeing how they look against the Knicks team early in the year, a Knicks team that did go out and get aggressive and get Mikal Bridges and is accelerating, how a team that stagnant is unfair because they did make the all-in Siakam trade last year for this reason that kind of skipped free agency, but a team that didn't then get more aggressive in the summer, what does it look like against a team that did, that they beat in the playoffs last year? That to me is worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, and what is the value of having made that run? Is this a Hawks team like from a few years ago that just sort of falls flat on its face the next few seasons? Is this a team that gets figured out? Right. I think a big part of what the Pacers one of the reasons the Pacers were able to have such a successful season last year, even with the in-season tournament, right, getting all the way to the final of that, was because their pace was unlike anything else you played in the entire NBA. And in a regular season where you're not really doing that heavy scouting work going into each matchup, that I think took a lot of teams by surprise. Well, now they have the film on them. Now they know what to expect from Tyrese Halliburton. They know they're going to play at this breakneck pace. They know what they have film now with Siakam, with Halliburton. Also, Nemhard had a huge postseason. You're not going to overlook that guy anymore, right? We kind of know what Rick Carlisle is going to do with that team. Can they build on it? And can they build on it without the addition of major personnel? Now, adding Siakam within the last calendar year is the addition of major personnel. You get him with a full training camp into a full season. He's going to be better, right? It was even, at the very end, still a little rough between Siakam and the rest of the Pacers, as it was expected to be, even though he was still very good for them. But if that's a little bit more fluid, then I think maybe that's how you get that little extra 10% that you're trying to get better every single season. That's probably where it comes from. And then obviously the internal growth from Nemhard, from Halliburton, these guys. And then the return of Benedict Mathurin. What can he provide this team? Also, I think we'll learn a lot about all those things in the games before this, and then obviously the game that you circled.
Well, and then I think Halliburton, too, is just such an interesting question because one of the stars of the NBA last year for the early part of the year, and then was really hampered by the end of it, had some good playoff moments, but never was fully right after that hamstring issue. Then he's on Team USA this summer, but was really, and he was a good sport about it, so credit to him, but was like a meme for being not playing and being the team's biggest cheerleader, and then made the joke about when you show up to, when you don't do anything for the group project, we still get an A, and it's just like, okay, like he understood what this was for him. But this is like, when he's healthy, like one of the most electrifying players in the league. To me, one of the most fun guys to watch. The way he uses the full court, the pace he plays at, the audacity of some of what he does. There's a reason, to me, for a large chunk of last year, he was like my player of the season, not the MVP of the league, but the guy to me that like I defined last year for me because how much of a revelation it felt like he was becoming. Does that continue, or are we going to be in this mode where he's like hampered by injury and not quite an All-NBA guy as a result? Like, I think that is a real question for me for him this year. And if he is that guy, even if Nemhard showed us something and is pretty good, and like we like where he's going, and maybe Mathurin turns it around this year and whatever, and they have Siakam the whole year now, and this is a more balanced team to their credit as well. Like once they got in Siakam, they became much less of an all offense all the time to him and a little bit more in bounds, which you need to be, I think, to be really good. None of this works unless Halliburton is the best version of himself. And if he's not, and he's hampered, and he's just a watered down, broken up version of him, that spells trouble for me for Indiana this year.
Yeah, I think with Halliburton, I love Halliburton. I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying I've been a huge fan of Halliburton, even dating to the pre-draft process. I thought he was overlooked. I thought he should have been one of the first 3 picks in that draft. We still only have 1 year of him being an All-NBA caliber player. You just need more, right? And so if there is kind of with the Grizzlies situation, there's a little bit of pressure on these sort of younger teams to do it again. to not be a flash in the pan, to prove that you're not just that flash in the pan, to prove that you can have sustained success, that you're here, that you belong. Because even though the Pacers were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, I don't think most people would view the Pacers in that tier, right? They don't put them in that same tier as Boston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. I think most people would put them in a tier below that, including myself, by the way.
Yeah.
I think but there's a lot of reasons to believe that they should be in that tier. They can have the best offense in the league next year, right? Like that, Tyrese Halliburton, I do think is that dude, and is a transformative kind of player and the kind of player that you need to win a championship. I don't know if the Pacers are ready to win a championship right now, but you also look at the roster and you're like, wow, they've got like a lot of good things going. They got a great head coach. They have that kind of guy with Halliburton. They have an awesome co-star who fits perfectly with Siakam. Miles Turner has turned his career around and has been great for them over the last couple of years. They have good young role players between Nembhard. We'll see what happens with Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, and all these guys. Maybe they can add a little bit more depth for sure, but there's a lot to like about this roster, and I feel like we might not be giving them as much credit as they deserve, and yet I think a big reason for that is because it was just one season, and I think most people just want to see it again. My last team here is the Houston Rockets. I was looking for a team that I thought could make a substantial leap this year, similar to the Jamal Morant and Memphis Grizzlies point, but that was more of kind of turning the clocks back and kind of getting back to where they were, where the Rockets have been slowly kind of inching towards play-in status for a couple of years now. I think out of every team in the league, I do think even though we've entered this new age of parity in the NBA, I kind of think we know who the good teams are. Right? Like they could obviously kind of change in the standings, and the standings one year from the next could look very different, but we kind of know who the teams are going to be. The Rockets are the one team who I think this year could make a substantial leap. Now, I'm not going to pick the Rockets to win a championship or even win a playoff series, but they're the team to me that was outside of the playoff picture that could conceivably be in the playoffs next year. And I want to know, I think we'll know, I don't think we're going to know early if the Rockets are very good, kind of different than my other points. This is still a young team that has to grow. But I think by like the midpoint of the season, we'll have a better idea of what this team is. And I've got, like, we could circle any number of games, but to me, I do want to look at opening night. They'll be playing Golden State Saturday, November 2nd. That's their like 7th game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th game of the regular season. I think the Rockets will be fighting with the Warriors for playoff position this year, right? So depending on how they look against Golden State could tell us a lot about what the Rockets are. But I even go further down into the schedule. You look at their first national TV game, TNT, January 16th in Sacramento, another one of those teams that they're going to be battling for, I think at least my projections, battling for playoff positioning with. You got a few months into the season. It's a month before the NBA trade deadline. That's the game I'm circling for the Houston Rockets as by then I think we'll know. And then after that game, we'll really know whether or not the Houston Rockets are a viable playoff team or not.
They're a team, too, with so many players that this feels like vital years for their career. And that is always like an interesting thing to watch because some of it isn't under their control. It's like some of this like isn't really even about like what the player can or can't do. But it's just like what the circumstances and what the team is, organization, how they're moving affects you. But like Jalen Green's at the top of that list. He'll be a restricted free agent next summer. It's kind of the year where he has to put up numbers and be efficient and be a winning player. If he does it, he's getting paid. If not, I don't. Is he on the Rockets next year? Is he someone they're flipping? They also have Reed Shepherd coming in. Like there's competition in these guard minutes between those two guys, and maybe not directly 1-to-1, different sizes and whatnot. But they went and drafted another guard with a high pick, who's already making $10 million, 10.9, a little over $10 million, because rookie scale contracts are really high now. You have, like, they brought in AJ Griffin. Is there a flyer on there where they're going to try to work him in? What does Sengun look like this year? I mean, even with and without Sengun, he goes down last year. I thought he was their best player until he gets hurt. Then they find this look with Jabari Smith at center, and they're playing smaller, and the defense comes together, and like they go on a little bit of a run. Was that a fluke? Right. I probably think it is, but Sengun is someone that has a lot at stake financially this year as well. And then you get Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore, who I really liked last year. It's like there's so much going on this roster. Tari Eason as well coming back. There's just so much going on this roster that it almost, to me, like I believe you and agree with you in that I think they can compete with the Warriors for playoff positioning, but I think there's also this chance where it's all not moving in the same direction. And what does that mean for where they go? I think is a really fascinating question.
Yeah, and then again, being a month before the trade deadline, all those players that you were talking about, we'll probably know by then which ones are part of the real core and which ones might be a little bit more expendable, because it does feel like maybe there's a consolidation trade that needs to be made for Houston at some point. It might not happen this season. It might not have to. I'm not even advocating that it needs to happen this season, but by then we'll know whether it does, right? And so they do have a little bit of a problem with too many good young guys, and it does feel like they're going to have to pick a direction with some of them at some point. And if this is a viable playoff team by January, and the cream has kind of risen to the top of this thing, then they could have some expendable but valuable pieces that they can move to kind of get whatever it is that they need to kind of get over the hump and really get into that playoff mix there.
Wes, let me ask you one last question as we get out of here. Ricky O'Donnell, friend of the show at SB Nation, put the 9 Cooper Flag teams, the teams that could be in the sweepstakes for Cooper Flag, into different tiers. I'm going to read you the teams, and I just want you to. And the Spurs are on this list. You cannot answer the Spurs, because they have Wembanyama. You cannot answer the Spurs. Okay.
Okay.
But I'm going to list the 8 other teams. You tell me which one you're most looking forward to watching this year. Brooklyn Nets, Washington Wizards, the Portland Trailblazers, the Pistons, the Jazz, the Bulls, the Hornets, and the Toronto Raptors. Which one of those teams are you actually excited to catch 10, 15, 20 games of as we look at this year? It's a weird crop of teams at the bottom.
This is stressful, Chris.
Yeah, it is. Because look, our job, our job is to watch basketball and talk about it. That's awesome. There's just sometimes when you're it's Thursday or it's a Wednesday and you're tired and you just maybe want to play some PS5. You want to watch a movie. You want to take a nap, and you're just okay, but I also need to watch. I haven't watched the Blazers in 2 weeks. How's Donovan Clingan doing? And it happens, and you're just crushing weird tape in February.
So for the record, and this won't surprise you even a little bit, I don't have a modern video game console.
You're just getting into movies, so that's okay.
It's a slow game. No, and I think that the thing that you bring up about, wow, it is sort of our job to watch the Portland Trailblazers every once in a while, and Zach Lowe has a great way of phrasing this. I think he calls it eating your vegetables, and the best way to do it is when they're playing each other, right? I think intuitively you would think, well, if they're playing the Mavericks, I guess I'll watch because it's the Mavericks and at least I have Luka Doncic. But what ends up happening is you end up just watching Luka Doncic the whole time and not paying any attention to the Portland Trailblazers. But if Portland is playing Charlotte, then you have to watch both teams and you kind of knock them out both at the same time. My answer, though, I think is Chicago and Charlotte. I'm a little interested, at least for the first couple of weeks, to see what the Bulls look like. I'm a Kobe White fan. I think he's really fun to watch.
How could you not be after last year?
I'm interested to see what the team look. It does feel like they're going in a different direction. Removing DeMar DeRozan from the equation makes them worse, no doubt about it. It also gives them a completely new identity. And adding Josh Giddey into the mix, and I remain higher on the Giddey trade than I think consensus is. I thought it was a good trade for them, moving Caruso for Giddey. I have zero problem with that trade for them. It gives them a fast-paced guy. I think Giddey played well in the Olympics for Australia. I thought he showed a lot of stuff, what it looks like when he's sort of at the helm of a team and captaining a ship, which he was obviously no longer able to do in Oklahoma City for good reasons. But I'm interested to see what him and Kobe White look like in the backcourt and how that kind of changes the identity of that team. I think they'll play fast. Speaking of playing fast, that's why I'm in on the Charlotte Hornets. If LaMelo Ball is healthy, Coach Lee, the new coach there, has talked to the media about wanting to play faster and all those things, and I believe it, right? He's got the track record to back it up, and he's got the personnel now to back it up. LaMelo Ball always felt like he was kind of rubbing against the scheme of the coach in the past, where those things just didn't jibe. Now it feels like Charles Lee and LaMelo Ball, they kind of want to do the same thing. They both want to play in the full court. They both want to push tempo. They both want to do that. You add LaMelo Ball now to Brandon Miller. Hopefully we get to see a full season of those guys together. I think that and I like some of the additions they made. I think the Josh Green thing makes a lot of sense for them. I hesitate to do this because I've shared this joke with you before, but one of my rules about the NBA is I don't watch the Charlotte Hornets after February. I'm kind of interested in watching the Charlotte Hornets after February this year if it all works out. They're also a team in the East that could compete for a play-in spot, which is kind of crazy. But
yeah,
they're not that far removed from fighting for play-in position. They need LaMelo Ball healthy. If he's healthy, they are a team that could finish in the top 10 easily.
Yeah, they're my answer in the East. Brandon Miller, year 2 as well, just being someone to be really excited about. There's something going on there, and if they nail this head coaching hire, it's going to be worth watching. I'm still like Mark Williams. I think Grant Williams, despite all the weirdness with him, can be a functional NBA player and helpful on a better team.
There's also a little bit of, I'm glad you brought up Mark Williams, a little bit of rumblings out of Charlotte. Could start taking some threes, like for real. That could be fun.
Let's see it. I always, with centers, it's like I just want to see it before I need like
Agreed.
20 games of it before I believe it. My answer in the West is Portland. I'm not saying this because I think they're going to be particularly good. But it's like, I like Shaedon Sharp, I like Scoot Henderson, and I like Klingon. I just want to see if those guys can like be more functional. And I don't know why I think this, Wes. I think that's who's going to get the number 1 pick next year. I can't tell you why.
Ugh.
Just something about it makes me feel like we're going to be Cooper Flag on the Portland Trailblazers next year. I cannot tell you why that is.
The only reason Portland matters this year is whether or not or when they trade Jeremy Grant. That is their most important value to the NBA season.
I think they should trade Anthony Simons as well. Like I really think
I think they've looked at it. I think they've explored it. Anthony Simons is a tough player to trade. He's not an easy fit in a lot of places, and he makes a decent amount of money. No, I like Scoot Henderson. I remain a big fan of Scoot Henderson. He's one of those guys where I just pull up his possessions on Synergy and stuff and then just start scrolling through and watching him. Maybe I'll do it for Klingon, even though I kind of feel like I know what Klingon is. Like, are you tuning in to watch Walker Kessler? Not really, even though I like him. Like,
I mean, Klingon has a little more range.
Oh, for sure.
It's just it is a weird roster, though. It's like Aiden still on that roster, and I'm just like, what's going on here? You know?
It's true. He's still there. So how much playing time is your guy Klingon even going to get? I could not disagree with you more on this. I have zero. Portland Trailblazers will be taking vitamins for me. That's going to be eating the vegetables. And I like vegetables. This is going to be eating like, I really dislike pickles. This is going to be me eating a pickle.
You don't like pickles.
Very anti-pickle.
Okay. My dad is 69, just had a pickle for the first time, and
Nice.
He I think feels the same way as you. Yeah, nice. I made him eat a pickle because he's bad at eating anything that's like green, and I was like, Dad, this isn't like the healthiest thing, but it's good.
So you went pickle first?
He's ahead of other vegetables, but we were just like at a burger place, and I had a pickle, and I just cut him off part of the pickle.
And then how do you like it? Was he pro or against?
Pretty indifferent is what I would say.
I don't see that. I don't know how you can be indifferent to pickle. In fact,
I think he was being kind to me, who like loves pickles, and I eat a lot of pickled things. Pickled red onion. I love a kimchi.
So
sauerkraut.
I do like pickled other foods. My problem was with the cucumber family in general. I despise cucumber in salad. Cucumber is the most indifferent vegetable. I hate it, and I recognize I'm weird. It's just water. Okay, I'll drink water. Why do I need it?
Yeah,
get it out of my food. It provides nothing. Even the crunch isn't as crunchy as you'd want. I can eat a cracker and it's crunchier and better. Even I'll take a water chestnut over a cucumber.
Never had a water chestnut.
You can buy them in a can. They're very easy to find.
Okay, I'll go to this weekend. We'll go to the grocery store. We'll go to Target and we'll get a can of water chestnuts.
Guarantee you they have them there. Yeah, throw them in with some broccoli and chicken. You got it. You got a meal.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I have had a water chestnut and like an Asian vegetable medley.
Yeah, you've had them.
Yeah. Okay.
They're delicious. They're the best part. Not the best part.
What a good part.
I went overboard there.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Got a little excited.
Just strong. You got really excited about water chestnuts. Anti-pickle, Wes Goldberg. So when you go to restaurants, does your wife take your pickle?
She is also anti-pickle.
So you just say no pickle.
There's no pickles on the table. Actually, I have gone so far as to when the waiter or waitress comes up and asks if I have any food allergies, I say I'm allergic to pickles.
Can you be? I'm assuming you can be allergic to pickles. I've just never heard of a pickle allergy.
Yeah, I don't have one. So
Yeah,
I don't know if
obviously,
it exists.
obviously.
So I can't
Obviously.
speak to the validity of the pickle allergy as a concept, but I will tell you that I dislike them very strongly. Actually, for my bachelor party, this might be. I could share this on the podcast, unlike a lot of the other things that happened at my bachelor party. But I had a list of dares, several of which are the things I can't share.
Yeah, sure.
On this program. But the final boss of the dares that my friends made me do was to eat a pickle.
They
how
really
much I hate pickles.
They really should have done you dirtier, frankly, and do something that I personally really like, which is a pickle shot.
So that's what I ended up doing.
Okay.
Because if
Did you do hot sauce with it?
No, I don't believe there was hot sauce involved.
Okay.
I don't know how the pickle back. I did a pickle back. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I just think of it in my head. I think of it as pickle, but you get a little hot sauce you put it like on your thumb, like you do like salt with like a tequila shot.
Oh, so I just did with the whiskey.
Yeah. So like there's a couple different ways. I've had it with like I think vodka. It's a white liquor.
So I think I did a shot of Jack Daniels, and then I chased it with the pickle juice. And I guess the idea is that you can't, you don't taste the whiskey, or it doesn't burn the same way after you do the pickle juice. I guess my problem with it is that between those two items, I didn't want to taste the pickle juice. I'd rather taste the Jack Daniels.
Yeah, which is valid.
And that's why it was the dare that I had to do. So I didn't like it. I very much disliked it.
Yeah, if you don't like pickles, I think a pickleback is not going to be for you.
But I did it.
Yeah, I'm proud of you for that.
I'm a gamer.
Sorry. You're a gamer, unlike whatever the Blazers are doing. All right, we're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Wes Goldberg. Back with next week with more of the Just Basketball Show. Be well, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.